Hello and welcome to another edition of Political Insider. I'm your host, Herald-Tribune political editor Zac Anderson. With me today is Christian Zeigler, the Republican State Committee man for Sarasota County and a delegate to the Republican National Convention. Christian, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Zac. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. So a continued hot topic here in Republican circles is the idea of party unity and the party coming together after a divisive primary. We've seen some good news for Donald Trump this week. A number of high-profile donors have come over to his camp, people who were supporting Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or other candidates and are now getting behind Trump. And there was also some news that Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, who has famously withheld his endorsement of Trump, might be inching closer to offering that endorsement. You're pretty in tune with the activist base of the party through your work with the Republican Party of Florida. What's your take on the state of Republican unity right now?
I think it's getting there. Obviously, when you have a Republican primary with so many candidates, everyone has various top candidates that they may have picked, may not have been Trump. But now that we're past the primary, there's always a time where really feelings are kind of hurt.
Right.
You're, fixing those, and you're kind of going. So the farther we get from the primary, the more people will become unified.
Right.
So I think right now it's at a good state. I'm actually shocked, to be honest, after such a bloody primary and such a long, drawn-out process. Just looking at the other leaders and the other, Republican Party activists, I think people are excited. And really, at the end of the day, we're very fortunate that we're running against Hillary Clinton because no one's going to motivate the base more than Hillary. So.
And you had a lot of people who said some very aggressive things about Trump, Rick Perry, Marco Rubio, who seem to be coming on his side. But then you have, other people, some prominent holdouts still. Glenn Beck, who's a very popular commentator on the right, who I think said just this week on CNN that he thinks Trump is a sociopath and a narcissist, some pretty strong words. You have people like Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney who continue to say they're not going to vote for Trump. Does that concern you at all? I mean, are these people just kind of outliers at this point? Or, the idea that he's still so divisive amongst some Republicans, does that concern you going into the general election?
It really doesn't, because when you look at Donald Trump, there's two things. Number one, those individuals, they obviously have their own agenda and they have their own audiences that they're going to play to. But you look at like Jeb Bush, obviously he came in with a lot of money. He was the favorite, and Trump beat him.
Yeah.
And then you look at Mitt Romney. He ran the last election, and he really couldn't motivate the base. He had trouble where there were a lot of conservatives that didn't come out to vote. So, obviously those individuals, they're in a different position.
Right.
And I think they'll end up coming around as we get closer.
Right.
And they start realizing that the Supreme Court's at risk and all of that. But then the second thing is I think Donald Trump is going to motivate a different base than you've seen. He's really motivating the far right. He's also motivating the middle, the working class, the blue-collar workers that are looking at him, and they're seeing his success and what he's done as opportunity, and that's very enticing to them.
But is he reaching out to his critics? He was in, I think, New Mexico this week and had a rally where he criticized the Republican governor there, who's kind of a rising star in the party, a Hispanic governor, a diverse face for the party. I think he jabbed Jeb Bush a little bit, continued to kind of rip into some of these people that have been his critics. Is he reaching out enough to folks who disagree with him?
I don't know. I mean, when you look at him during the primary, he obviously that was his tactic during the primary, and it worked. I think Americans are at the point where they're just fed up with political speak. They're fed up with people that are scripted by staff and that are just going to hit talking points. And really, Trump's just speaking his mind. Now, sometimes that gets him in trouble, obviously. And then other times, I think it really benefits him across the board because you get a lot of Americans that are disenfranchised. They feel disenfranchised with the system and the way it's currently run. And that kind of talk and that kind of action is really motivating them and saying, okay, maybe this guy is a different type of candidate, a guy that I can support.
Well, it worked for him in the primary, and so far, according to the polls, it seems to be working for him okay in the general election. He's tied in a lot of the polls we see here in Florida. I think a lot of people thought that Clinton might have a bit of an advantage in a diverse state like this with a lot of minority voters, but a lot of the recent polls that have come out have shown her and Trump basically in a dead heat. Her unfavorability ratings are just as high as his. One advantage, though, that she has is that she's got some super PACs supporting her that already have raised a ton of money. They're going on air here in Florida to tear down Trump. She's got organization in the state. She's holding conference calls with some of her surrogates to kind of push out their message against Trump. Are you worried at all that he could be outgunned early on and defined early on?
No, I mean, with Donald Trump, he commands such a large media attention that he's able to offset any of those tactics. And that's what you saw in the primary. He was heavily outspent. He did very well in the primary. Obviously, he came out on top.
Sure.
And when you look at Hillary, really, I mean, she can start focusing on Florida, but she hasn't even wrapped up the nomination process yet. She's not even the nominee.
She might be putting the cart before the horse a
Well,
little bit,
that's exactly right.
or you know, being smart and getting out there early and trying to define him early, like Obama did with Romney. There isn't sort of a pain there still with conservatives to see what Obama did to Romney and worry that that's what Hillary's going to do to Trump.
No, I'm not too worried about it. I mean, when you look at right now in the environment that we're in, the American people are tired of business as usual. Hillary Clinton's been in the spotlight, in the political spotlight, for like 30 years. I don't even think she's driven a car, she said, in the past 20 years. She's completely out of touch. She's Washington as usual. She's politics as usual. She's going to employ those tactics with all these super PACs coming out early. But I think when voters really go to vote, Donald Trump, you look at him, he's a total outsider, and I think they're going to consider that when they go to the polls.
And he's a pretty well-known figure. He could be harder to define than some past candidates. Before I let you go here, I wanted to change the subject and talk about somebody who I know is a friend of yours, Carlos Baruf, the Manatee County home builder who is running for the U.S. Senate. I know you've known him for a while. He got into a little bit of hot water last week when he was talking about President Obama and what he believes is President Obama's kind of weakening of the military, and he called him an animal, and he repeated it. And some people saw some racial undertones in calling the first black president an animal. Other people thought that, that's just sort of political correctness and that, he's just using strong language. And he said that, in Spanish, which is his first language, it's pretty common to call people that you disagree with an animal. I wonder what you think about that controversy. I mean, is he getting into some language that he maybe should avoid here, or is this overblown?
Probably overblown. I mean, when you look at Carlos Baruf, I've known him for over a decade now, and he's the type of guy, he's almost like Trump in a way that he's going to speak his mind. He's going to say what's on his mind. He's going to just, go out there and he's not calculating what a response is going to be or what a statement's going to be, because he really hasn't been involved directly with politics. He's obviously, been a donor and helped campaigns and helped Republicans win for probably 10 years now, maybe over 10 years. But as a candidate, he's, again, just speaking what's on his mind. And I can tell you, I know Carlos Baruf. He's not a racist, so I think those attacks are from the left and probably motivating their base or an attempt to motivate their base. But Carlos is the type of candidate, he's going to go out, he's going to go speak his mind. It's going to upset some people. Other people are going to like it because, again, I think we're at a time right now where people are so sick of the political correctness and they're so sick of typical political speak that it probably resonates.
What do you think of how he's doing in the race in general? He spent a lot of money, $3 million on ads so far. There's 4 other Republicans in the race, so it's a crowded field. Is he differentiating himself at all? How do you see this Senate race breaking down right now?
When you look at the Senate race, we have some interesting candidates. We've got a lot of good candidates, too, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at Carlos, he's obviously an outsider. He's a non-political guy. You look at Todd Wilcox, for example. He's got an amazing background. He's got a great resume.
Yeah,
you look at the lieutenant
CIA,
governor.
FBI.
Yeah, successful business guy as well. You look at the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor has, obviously been involved with Florida politics and Florida government for a long time. You look at DeSantis, he's got a staunch conservative voting record. And then you look at Jolly, who really won a tough race in St. Pete. And so you look across the board, I think there's a candidate for someone. It's almost like the Republican primary for president, where no one has an excuse not to vote or to get excited behind one of the candidates. But it's still early, so we'll see how this race plays out.
It's an interesting contest, and I'd love to have you on again to discuss it. We'll leave it at that.
Anytime.
Thanks for being here,
Thanks,
and
Zach.
thank you all for joining us for another edition of Political Insider. Please tune in again next week.